State Police Crime Lab, which took quite a while.
It took 3 months, yeah.
You mean verifying that?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yes, they had a phone verification from the crime lab. Yes, he's the guy, it matches. She said, no, I won't issue a warrant for his arrest until I see it in print. Well, DNA evidence was first used in England in 1988. So by 2000, it wasn't even 15 years old. They were still challenging it in court. DNA analysis took months, unlike today where they have to, you're watching Law and Order SVU, you got the crime that happens in the first prelude to the intro, and then by the end of the third commercial, they've got the analysis back, Doesn't happen that way. It's quicker now, a lot quicker now than it was in its early days, but this was the early days of DNA. Like I said, it had only been used in the criminal justice system for about 10, 15 years. Yep.
Do you have children?
Yes, he had a toddler son who I contacted for the book and politely declined to give a statement of any kind or be interviewed. I really wanted to interview him. College age now, or actually probably post-college. He had a toddler son when he was arrested, but his wife was pregnant, and she had a baby girl that he has never met. His wife, of course, divorced him and, was gone.
Was the Wayne County Examiner helpful in this case?
Actually, one of the Wayne County detectives assigned to us played a major role in getting the confession. So, yeah. So she, the detective, the Oxygen Network did a 1-hour TV special on this. If anybody's interested in buying the book, you get one free. Okay, and it was a 1-hour special, and in that you get to see the detective discussing how he got the guy to confess. And it involved DNA, just informing him. But like I said, it was new enough technology, new enough science that he didn't seem to be aware of it. Okay, and in the interview process between the detectives from Detroit and Wayne County, who were the first ones to interview him, they spent hours with this guy. It was apparent that he really wasn't that aware of the significance of a DNA match. And so he wasn't guarding against the possibility of leaving DNA evidence in his crimes. So, yeah.
How long have you been a detective?
I started in Detroit I started the police academy, September the 10th, I celebrated my 50th year of starting, or 50th anniversary of starting the police academy in 1973. I retired, I gave myself a Valentine's Day gift in February of 2005. I retired from Detroit to pursue a job. I had been appointed chief of police in Saginaw. I served there for almost 8 years, and from there I went to the National White Collar Crime Center down south, down around the D.C. area, Richmond, Virginia, West Virginia. They have multiple offices. And that's where I used during this whole thing, I'm not the typical cop. I didn't spend my spare time in the bars. I went to school. Consistently, I was like a habitual student. I ended up with a Ph.D. in political science, public administration. So when I left my position as chief up in Saginaw, I left it to go to be the research director of the National White Collar Crime Center, where let me see if I can remember the quote. We train state and local law enforcement to investigate complex financial and computer-related crime. And it was kind of cool. I mean, it wasn't as exciting as I was used to, but it was still periodically there was I don't know if anybody remembers, it doesn't usually happen in Canada, but some kid, I think in Nova Scotia, course, they don't have mass shootings in other countries, only in the United States. If you listen to the media, this kid decided he was going to shoot a couple Mounties, killed 2 mounted policemen. What he didn't realize is that boasting about it on Facebook is probably not a real good way not to get caught. Well, we were able, at the time, Facebook had a glitch in its software that we knew about. So we, you know, the Mounties had already broadcast that they thought that it was this kid. So we went on, we did our magic, my computer geniuses did their magic, I should say. They found his Facebook page and they started following, because not only could they follow him from what he was saying, but the software that we had could follow him geographically. Okay, and you can't do it, you know, now. Okay, we did it. And we were able to call, I got the call, you know, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Newfoundland and said, hey, you know where this guy is, right? No. Well, he's at the corner of such and such, and someone said, how do you know that? And where are you calling from? I said, I'm calling from West Virginia, in the United States. Well, how would you know? Never mind, okay? I'm telling you where this guy is, go get him, you know. And he went, but between the time me talking to the Mounties and trying to explain to him that we did know, and who we were, and how we were able to determine where he was, he moved 4 or 5 times. So I'm on the phone telling them where to go while they're chasing this guy. They caught him.
Wow.
But like I said, it wasn't as fun as chasing bad guys down dark alleys with a gun like it was in
I
Detroit.
have one more question.
Sure.
In any of your cases, or cases that you've known about, has a psychic ever been called in?
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact.
Which cases? What are the cases?
I got called. I was in K-9 before I got promoted to sergeant. Okay, I started the K-9 unit as a handler in 1979. I worked all the way up to when I got promoted to sergeant in 1986. They put me in charge of the K-9 unit. While just before I got promoted, I was training one of the first cadaver dogs in the state. We were training 3 of them, 2 for us and 1 for Wayne County. And once the news came out that we had cadaver dogs, which nobody in the state had up to that point, I got a call from a Dearborn police officer, detective, and says, hey, listen, I've got this bottom drawer case. Now, a bottom drawer case for a detective is that case that you've never been able to solve, but it just grabs you so much you can't stop looking, you can't stop digging. He had a case, very well-to-do businessman out in Dearborn, married how can I say this without sounding? He was Middle Easterner, okay, and he married an American woman. And somewhere along the line, they must have hit a bump, as you always do, in you know, marriages from time to time, only he cut her up into pieces, dumped parts of her in plastic bags along the freeway, and threw her torso in the Detroit River. It's kind of an argument you never return from. Anyways, this detective was frustrated, couldn't get it out of his mind. The house it happened in had been sold and was being occupied by another family who probably hadn't been told that a murder was committed in their home. But the interesting thing was, you know, he says, listen, can you use your body dog count? He says, if you can find evidence of the dog indicates that she was cut up in the garage, or part of her was buried somewhere on the premises, can the dog find it? I said, well, you know, it's new to us. I said, it's my first call out on the first body recovery dog that we've ever trained. I says, I'll try. So we went out there, and I got to his office, and there's this strange-looking fellow sitting in a chair off to the side of the room, and he says, before we go in, he says, be very quiet. He doesn't like loud noises and people who speak very loud. I said, who's he? That's my psychic. I go, you're kidding. He goes, no. He says, that's my psychic. He says, I've had no luck in any other way. He says, but I got a psychic. He says, he's got a lung history of having been successful. So he tells me that while you're out in the backyard and searching the premises with the dog, he says he's going to be sitting in the front room of the house, and seeing what he can pick up, okay? Well, the guy walks in and he sits down on the couch, and the detective's, you know, jawboning with the family. I don't know how he went about it. I wouldn't want that job. Anyway, he's convincing the family that this is normal, you know, don't worry about it. And I come back after about 45 minutes working with the dog. We find out that the detective tells me this guy's got a legal pad, yellow legal pad, and he's sketching. And he says, this is the most interesting thing I've ever seen. He says, I never would have believed this. He says, I did it on an off chance. He says, this guy just sketched the house as it was, the interior of the house as it was when the crime was committed. This is all new furniture. The house had been remodeled and everything. The guy had never seen crime scene photos. But he sat there in the living room of this house and was able to somehow visualize what it looked like 10 years earlier. And I'm going, I'm not telling my wife. She already believes in this crap. But it did kind of make me, you know, hesitate next time I heard about somebody getting a psychic involved. But that was my only experience with a psychic.
Did the dog find anything on site?
No.
Did the psychic hit it right? Contribute?
Well, he's not the only one. He chopped up the body and left it along I-75, but that's a totally different story.
But he was caught.
No, he's still out there. Nobody ever proved that he did it. He's a very successful businessman. I don't know his name, so don't ask me. It was the Dearborn case. I never got that deeply involved in it. I just did what the detective asked me to do with my dog. So, but that was his frustration, is that he couldn't put this guy in jail where he knew he should be. Yeah.
So going back to the sailor,
Mm-hmm.
if he'd gone home that night and not stopped by and called attention to the body he put there,
That's the crazy thing. And you know, talking about, I was going to kind of, when I was telling you the story, tie it in with the Macabre Michigan theme, because to me, I mean, there's not many things more macabre than the mind of a serial killer, and there's so many weird aspects to this case, such as, why did he decide to look over the bridge? Was he trying to, you know, see if she went anywhere? Was she still going to be there? It was ice and water, so she was stuck there. Maybe he thought he was going to just make sure that she was gone so nobody would find her. But at the railroad tracks, the 3 people that he left at the railroad tracks, the last one, the 3rd gal, he left right out there for everybody to see. So I don't know, it's this weird thing where, does he want to be caught? Does he not want to be caught? Does he want to hide his crime? Does he not want to? And so there's the question of, why did he check her in the first place, coming home from work the next day? And why did he flag somebody down and have them call 911? Now, I think that he realized these people across the street, okay, they saw me come over, look over the bridge. If later on today or tomorrow they find a body, they're going to think, why did that guy not report it? He must have seen the body there, so why did he just drive away? So I think Sergeant Petrie in Dearborn Heights really felt like he was trying to get in front of it by like, hey, I'm a good Samaritan, I discovered this body, you know, type of thing. But yeah, there's those weird aspects of, yeah, you do wonder if he would have just gone home. He should have just gone home. He should not have checked, at least in daylight. Maybe he should have, as he pulled up, I mean, I don't want to, you know, advocate for the criminal method, but when he's pulling up and thinking about checking, he should have seen the people over there and just kept going, I guess.
then like with the ones he posed, maybe he's just saying, see, I can do this and you can't touch me.
Well, you know, Jerry mentioned Doc, who was, you know, in charge of the unit then. And that's kind of what he had this feeling like it was cat and mouse. And he had this great quote Doc did, like, you know, he was telling maybe his FBI profiler at the time, well, if we don't stop this guy, he's going to set a chair right on the railroad tracks and set him right in there. You know, like he would do the escalation.
Doc was a very passionate leader.
But it was just the idea that he was escalating. After Dearborn Heights, after he left Wendy Jordan in the river, Dearborn Heights was tailing him. They were stealing his trash. They got the warrant for his DNA and all of that. They knew they had him pegged. They couldn't arrest him, as Jerry mentioned. Their hands were tied. They could not arrest him. Meanwhile, 6 more people were attacked. 3 survived, 3 did not in
By
those
him?
2 months. But he cooled it. Between January 2nd and like mid-March, he cooled it. He didn't do anything that we know of. And then in mid-March, he started up again. So he did escalate toward the end, and yeah.
What did your profilers from the FBI give you pretty much right away?
Pretty much, they said, well, he's a white male. He's going to be somewhere between 20 and 35. He's going to be a working kind of guy, and so on and so forth. They didn't give us hair color. They didn't give us height and weight. They gave us the psychological aspects of what to look for, and that's about all they can really do, because that's what they study, is the psychological aspects of other serial killers, and base it on that. Basically, white males have the market cornered on serial murder, except for one, the Atlanta child killer was African American. Other than that, we got the market cornered. There's a lot to the psychological profiling of serial crime, and that was one of the fascinating things about my job for the 5 or 6 years that I was there, because after violent crimes, they put me in charge of special investigations, and I had sex crimes, and we worked, I think, 9 or 10 sex serial rapists, and it was the same thing. I mean, it was, they had a certain MO, they had a certain, they weren't all white, okay, but they had a certain MO, a certain way of doing things, a certain area they liked to feel, that they felt comfortable operating in. And the one thing that always stuck with me, there was a case of a schoolgirl rapist on the east side that we were working intently, and there was like 6 or 8 different victims, little girls going to school. And a guy on one of those BMX bikes with the seat missing. Okay, for some odd reason, I guess because they couldn't afford a seat. Anyway, we caught one guy that was good for half of them. And the chief went to the media and said, we have the schoolgirl rapist. But Doc went to him and said, I don't think I'd be really bragging about it. He says, there's 2 sets of DNA out there. He says, we got 2 of them going at the same time in the same area. The one we didn't catch that day was the guy with the bike. He stopped for 2 or 3 years. Well, if you read about serial crime, you will find that one of the things that everybody agrees on is that serial criminals don't stop. They either go to jail, or they're dead, or they move, but they don't stop. This guy stopped for 3 years. 3 years later, I'm running sex crimes, and it starts up again. And we catch him. Same bike. I don't know where he was hiding it, but we catch him, and we do a background check, find out he'd been in prison for 3 years. So, they were right again. So, fascinating book. It's all true, every word of it. All the pictures are real evidence photos. Some of them have been blurred out a little bit for public consumption. Every book gets a free CD. We cannot make money off the CDs, otherwise we violate their copyright. But it was a fascinating enough case. Anybody remember the series JAG, Judge Advocate General?
Yeah.
They did a segment. They replicated our case. They changed it from the Nimitz to a battleship. And they changed it from Detroit to Washington, D.C. Or no, I'm sorry. That was the district. Anybody remember the district? It was a short 3-year series. Yeah, it was about the police commissioner in Washington, D.C. They also replicated the case. That was where they had him on a battleship. But the character that the actor that they got looked just like our guy. I mean, he was tall, he was redheaded. I'm going, oh my God, that's John Eric Armstrong right there. And, the one from JAG, they started with a tip from Interpol in Europe. Okay, but it was the same case. And the writers verified that they looked at our case and built their episode on that. So,
Do you get royalties?
No. Public servant, I don't get paid.